How do I look?
You look great. Hello, everybody. It's, what day is it? Second?
It's
the first.
It's the 1st of March.
It's the beginning of meteorological spring.
I feel like we should do an homage to the guy who directed Twin Peaks.
Lynch.
David Lynch.
If you can
believe it.
1st of March. We're giddy here because the snow is disappearing.
Yeah, that's cool.
I feel really lucky. I took my kids ice skating on Sunday. Went for a long, good skate. And then the next day, the rink melted.
Pond.
Yep, it's all over.
Ponded. I'm gonna move this so I don't splash coffee on your glorious pieces here.
That's okay. They can have a little coffee on them.
Okay.
I hope everybody can hear us all right. I didn't really test our setup. I just put everything up quickly.
I'm wearing an Underground Roof shirt?
Yeah.
Am I? I thought this was from a show.
Well, it was for the show where we were showing Underworld.
Uh-huh.
And I don't think we've ever released that shirt.
Oh, Underground, like as in the expansion I designed, not Underground as in like illegal.
Yes, correct. But there are a few leader shirts that we've never released, and that is one of them.
Hi, I'm here today.
Yeah, we're all good. It's been a busy day. So yeah, this is our monthly stream. We usually do this on the first Tuesday of every month with some exceptions. Things have been a little quiet lately, but they are now gearing up in kind of full force. The studio, I felt like, got very busy very fast.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that.
It's very exciting. It's a very exciting time. Exciting time to be alive.
Yeah, for many reasons. This is ARCS. We'll talk about that later. I have it all laid out. It's also candy. Let's start with games being played. What are you playing, Patrick?
I knew you were going to ask me this, and I got ready for it, and now my mind is ajar. So I played with Drew Brockington, cartoonist extraordinaire. We played
my children's favorite writer. Probably.
Really?
Yeah, they love. They dressed up as castronauts for the book signing.
Okay, that's fair. We asked my daughter if he came over to the house, and so we asked my daughter, "Do you want to get any books signed while he's here?" It would be very flattering. And then she got all of her Drew Brockington books down from the shelf, and they had all already been signed because we've always met him at shows.
I see.
So we already had all the. So we're like, oh, whatever. So I played Dungeon Bowl with him Sunday night, which is Blood Bowl's weird half brother. It's the same rules as Blood Bowl, except it's set in a kind of Warhammer Quest style dungeon, and you play to 1 point. There's no rounds.
Perfect.
There's rounds, but there's no. It's not 16 rounds. And the game's over. It's just you play until someone scores that 1 point, and it's very silly. And I went for I was like, it's gonna take us 45 minutes to get down this hall. I'm just gonna run around, and then I lost the ball on the trip back, and he ran it in 2 turns, and I
love it.
Yeah, so that was it. I've been playing Warcry. Played Born, which is Warcry's. I taught my kid.
Also younger brother.
Younger brother. Yeah, Warcry's younger brother. Taught my kid how to play. Played Born. We didn't play with the special abilities. We just played with the pieces as is, which I don't know if that advantages either team.
Yeah.
But it seemed fine without it. And played the board game adaptation of Tales for the Loop. I think that was not since last month.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a month. So.
Yeah, and I talked about it on Twitter, and people clapped back against it, and it was like it still ends up being like most adventure games that you're just rolling dice to see who does things. Sure. But I was like, I appreciate that, but the game does so much in service of its theme that I thought I'm kind of inspired by how to approach that.
It seems very compact too in its design.
Yeah. There's not a ton there, and so I liked. So I really enjoyed playing it. I'd be happy to play it again. I haven't played it since then. There's one weird little system that I think it's about making sure the robots don't move too quickly, but they move on a grid. And so imagine if you put a grid over the root board and you're moving on the vector system that root is, and then there's this piece that moves around on a grid, and if it intersects one of the clearings, then he's there and chomping your guys and not. So that was that. Video game wise, I've started Grounded, with John Gilmore. We finished Raft.
Sure.
And have you played Grounded? Do you know the premise?
No.
It's Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the video game. So you start out in this in the lawn of this family, and you have to it's all about crafting. So it's you go get grass, you can make a spear, you can hunt bugs and eat them, and your motives move really fast, so fast it's a little frustrating. But where we kind of ran into a wall with it, and we did some reading about it, and the combat is just really hard, and it I was like, okay, well, we're on a power curve, but then we started to level up our gear, and I was like, that didn't really seem to help that much. So
interesting.
Whereas once you have steel equipment in Minecraft, you feel like you can take a couple hits. And obviously, once you have diamond armor, you can take a few more hits. Yeah, and so it was a weird power curve. So. But,
interesting.
Yeah, board game wise, otherwise, I think I played PAX Transhumanity, and I think that's about it.
Yeah,
I've been wanting to play Mind Management.
It's been kind of busy and
and I've been working at night on projects, and it's just so it's I get home, I'm just gonna hang out with my wife until she goes to bed, and I'm gonna work again. And it's I just don't I don't want to commit the brain power to learning Mind Management.
Sure.
But it's cool. Whoever worked on it looks cool.
Yeah,
you played it, right?
Yeah, it's really good. I played a bunch of Mind Management. Quite good. I really like those sort of hidden movement games anyway, and so it's already hitting me in a genre that I really dig. I've been playing. It's been a busy month. A lot of games played this last month with a pretty big variety. My wife and I have been playing Undaunted North Africa.
That's awesome.
Which we're both really enjoying. I think it is just better than Normandy, but just good. It's not you don't get one or the other. They're both just excellent. I'm really impressed by both of the designers on that, Thompson and I can't remember the second designer, but they both did a great job. So we've been playing that. I have been playing all sorts of weird little games, including this one, Square on Sale, which I had some friends recommend to me. It's a Japanese auction game that is the weird child of the Estates and Othello. So if that seems intriguing to you, Square on Sale is pretty dope. And this... Here's a hot tip for the board game world. You can buy games from Amazon.co.jp very easily. It's shipped to me in 4 days.
Really?
It didn't cost that much. But yeah, it's great. Really enjoying it. I have El Grande displayed because I brought it in, and I really want to play it because many people in the office have never played it. And I thought, well, this needs to be rectified immediately. This is my old copy of El Grande. It's the thin copy. The same copy I brought with me to college and was in my dorm, and we played the shit out of it. I think we've probably played that copy of El Grande 60 times. Let's see. Beyond that, in terms of video games, I have been playing High Fleet. I played it a bunch last night.
Nice.
Which I love. High Fleet is blowing my mind. It is a game I can recommend to almost no one, because it was described, I was listening to a podcast about it, and they described it, jokingly referred to it as entering the crowded, rogue-like sub-game lunar lander tactical war game space. Yeah, it is kind of amazing. But the design is so compelling on so many different levels, and the way that it brings players into the world, I think, is really, really remarkable. My brother has been playing Elden Ring. I saw people chatting about it, and he assures me that I would hate it, and so I shouldn't spend any time.
I assume and
I'm so happy that people love it. Great, excellent, and I admire the team that made it. But that style of open world game has just never hit with me at all.
It's the combat for me. I like the open world, but the technicalness of the combat. I'm like, I would. If there was a $5, I could just walk around the world and look at how pretty it is. Right. I'd be there, but I don't have 18 hours to commit to it.
I think it's if I had the Zelda spectrum, I am much more like Link's Awakening than Breath of the Wild. Sure. And so when Breath of the Wild came out, it didn't really stick for me in a way that it grabbed other folks. I think it's just because that genre is.
Is Link's Awakening the one that came out on Switch recently? That's like a adaptation.
You see the Game Boy one.
Yeah. Okay. I got stuck on the Uzi boss. I could not Uzi as the gun. But the Ooze boss.
The Ooze boss. Weirdly, the High Fleet designer likes Pax Premier. I can see some of the influences in the design, and that was what called my attention to it. And then I was just overwhelmed by how fully realized it is. It's really incredible. And then I've also been playing. My children and I have been playing BattleTech recently, for kind of weird reasons. I was at a Barnes and Noble, and I saw the BattleTech beginner box, and I thought, weird, because I've not followed BattleTech closely, but that. When I think about BattleTech, I think about like Starfleet battles, levels of charts, and just you got to use Gator to figure out all your modifiers. And I thought they made a beginner's box, and so it was $20 or something. So I picked it up and thought, well, I wonder what it's like. How are they onboarding?
Does it have miniatures?
Yeah, it has 2.
Okay.
It has two miniatures. It's a pretty good package, and I think there's like maybe 8 mechs.
Yeah.
And you just use the miniature. There's some punchboard standees, but I kind of looked at BattleTech and thought, I'm just sort of curious how they onboard people into such a crunchy system.
Yeah.
And so I played it a little bit with my kids, who loved it. Even though we kind of just, after a few rounds, we were just role-playing with mechs, and it was fun. But it kind of made me miss playing with giant robots, and so I picked up the BattleTech game from 2018, the tactical game, which is so good. It's so smart. I think I like it more. I think I like it more than XCOM.
The early reviews I heard was that like the AI would like rightfully pick a mech to burn down, because that's how you play the game. Remember?
Right,
any war game you want to fire, especially with
don't half kill something.
Yeah, you gotta kill it, and so then once you know which unit the AI has picked, you can start backing that unit up, and they will not reprioritize.
Interesting.
Yeah. So.
Maybe
I just broke the game for you.
Well, no, but also
maybe they patched
that might have been an earlier version. I know that like the DLCs, people say added a lot to the.
Sure.
But what I really like about it is it has that good, chewy XCOM 2 campaign choices where you get a mission that's really tempting.
Yeah.
You're gonna make a lot of money at, but like half your mechs are broken, and your good crew's in the hospital, and you have to make a call. Look, you gotta do it right now.
Yeah.
With what you have, and there's some really interesting choices about how you pick your fights. That, by the way, is the best thing that Hive Fleet does. Hive Fleet is all about choosing battles, and like it is one of the first war games I've ever played that really makes you feel like you're on the run. And I love that as just in terms of like situating the player. There's a lot of other cool stuff about Hive Fleet I could talk about. But
so there's a BattleTech Alpha Strike, which is more like a war gamey. Or I don't know. I guess BattleTech is a war game, but it's more. You just roll dice and you could kill a unit in one shot.
Sure.
Yeah,
you don't have little mech charts and heat.
Yeah, I mean there is heat and there's armor, but it's vastly simplified. Have you played XCOM Chimera Squad?
I've only played 1 and 2. I've played all the old ones and then
So Chimera Squad, you might like it because it has it's much more tightly wound around its narrative, and those sorts of decisions, like so-and-so's on the bench for 3 weeks and I still gotta fight this battle.
I just really like the way that campaign systems give so much more meaning to the individual engagement. So good. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. That's kind of it. We've been playing just kind of lots of games all over the place.
I think it's interesting that I bought Blood Bowl. Last winter I bought Space Hulk. I had massive cost on eBay, and Warcry, and then BattleTech. It's like I finally got bit by my own nostalgia.
Yes.
I'm returning.
Yeah, correct.
I didn't even play much Blood Bowl in college, but I played some, and I wanted to get into it more, but I was in college, and it was the last half of college, and I was getting serious about what I was doing, and so I was like, I didn't really get into it, but now I can.
I try. It's so funny because I feel like I usually don't consume media by nostalgia. It's not a thing that often happens. But funnily enough, last night I ran into I think it was shared on Twitter or something, an old gaming magazine, like a PC gaming magazine from the mid-90s was shared. So they're on the Internet Archive, you can find them. And I was just flipping through the pages and remembering like these full print page spreads for like Donkey Kong Country 1 or for the N64.
Yeah.
And it was probably the most transporting media experience I've ever had, because this was stuff that I could have never recreated from memory. Right. And yet I remembered it perfectly.
Once it's out,
it was really interesting to have that activated.
So I walked into a barcade in Logan Square in Chicago, before the pandemic, and I remember getting like really like this race of nostalgia. They had that perfect like that dim lighting that your parents' barn has.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I was just entranced. I was with my wife. I was like, we're on a date. This is, we had left my daughter with my mother-in-law at my brother-in-law's apartment, and so we were like out first time in a while too. And then like within an hour, my wrist hurt.
Sure.
Yeah. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm not young.
Yeah. But yeah, that's it. So we've been playing lots of stuff lately. I played last game I mentioned. I played Marco Polo yesterday, which I'd never played, and I liked it. Okay, it was fun. It's interesting. One of the weirder Euro designs I think I've ever played. Aggressively technical. You almost cannot think about that game unless you're playing it.
Sure.
Like I'm very interested to like read a Marco Polo strategy guide because I have never seen that type of Euro design so dependent on a particular game state. Like usually there is some like, look, if we show you all the buildings, if you see how you can build your engines, if you can know these things about the board state, you can suggest certain patterns. But it really is a game about making the most out of your little opportunities. And I think
I like that.
Yeah, I think I could see you getting into it. And it also, the one thing not that I didn't like about it, but one character of it that I don't usually like in Euro games is it's so, the number system is so tightly designed that like you could measure everything in like there is some elemental unit, it might be like a third of a camel, that is the essential common denominator you can put beneath everything, and then say like, oh yeah, gold is worth like 5/8 camel.
Right.
Like these various weird fractions. And the entire game is about managing these conversions that are giving you like an extra third of camel here, an extra third of camel there, and then putting it together for a few points.
Spoken like a true 9/8 employee.
All right. So that's what we've been playing. Lots of stuff. The studio has been like straight buzzing over the past few weeks. We have a lot going on. One of the biggest things that we have going on is we have kind of roughly locked in our production schedule for kind of the next year. And then going, schedules are funny at a publishing company because you're always working like a year out, but there are these like quiet periods where things can be easily moved around without really upsetting anyone. And then once things lock in, we're going to be laboring under this schedule for basically the next 18 months or longer. I mean, this is a big set of decisions. And so we have our rough sense of when we're going to do an ARCS crowdfunding campaign. We have a rough sense of when we're going to be doing other titles, and with that rough sense comes the giant list of work to be done. And so I have spent, sadly, the last week I've not hardly played any ARCS. Instead, I've been moving ARCS from a project that only I'm working on to a project a small team is working on.
Right.
And that takes weeks to get that together, and that means punching up the rules to the point where I could hand them off to Josh, coordinating with the graphic with Patty who's doing the graphic design so that she knows what I think about the look of the game and the places where I want to see it stretch or different decisions like that, and also making sure Kyle's on the same page, and then also like running back and forth to our production manager's office and making sure that all the factory stuff is on the same page. And once all that happens, hopefully by the end of this week, I will be able to go back to working on the design, but I've had to take a couple week jump. So that's been the main thing on my brain, and I'm happy to talk more about what we've been doing with ARCS. Patrick, do you want to talk about what you've been up to?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. I have been working very focused on Dark or Dungeon Fortress. What are we calling it? We've talked about this twice now in front of camera, 3 times now in front of camera. What are we going to call this?
We haven't decided yet. I think Dark is a fine working name. I'm not crazy about it.
Right.
But I don't know. Dungeon Fortress is fine, Dark is fine. We could drop a 5th letter in there.
Let's do Fung first. Fungus. And so I have I've been working on that. Sorry, I was reading the screen. I've been working on that, and it's coming along very well. The cost is I haven't been able to paint because I've been working at night after like 10 o'clock till midnight every night on it. But that's showing. We're coming along. And so I'm to the point now where the design is far enough along that the design questions that remain are like actually about enforcing the theme, I feel.
Yeah.
And enforcing the theme and kind of playing in the space that the design decisions we've had up till now have created.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I'm exploring. Like we were just dusting the lobby of the manor, and now we're kind of wandering around inside of it, trying to figure out where those decisions are going to be.
Well, and I always think about, and I've mentioned this on this stream and other places before. Like design always has these two parts. First part is all about like, what is the grammar? What are the rules? What are the verbs? What are the nouns? Like, how does your language work? And then the second part, the more fun part of design, is start saying stuff.
Yeah.
And I think Dark to me is in this really interesting spot where you're kind of like making that transit right now.
Yep.
Because you're saying like, hey, I really want this type of character to exist in this game.
Right.
Can they be mapped onto the system, or do I need to build out a new wing in my syntax to make this character make sense?
Or do we hold off?
Or do we hold off? Is this in fact another game? I mean, one of the things I always try to look for is, am I tricking myself into thinking that I can put two games into one?
Mm-hmm.
I had that happen with Arcs for a while, where I was half convinced that the single ship mode should actually just be a different game entirely, and then we ended up finding a way to put it in, and it works fine. But that's just a very real decision, or very real kind of problem that you run into at this stage.
So and so I've been last playtest I went into thinking I think it's pretty close, and then my friends and I played it on Saturday, and they were like, these things need fixing. Mm-hmm. So right now we're doing all the players earn swords and I can't remember all the resources. Swords, wands, and hammers. And so swords are like how much tactical output you have during a turn. Hammers are how much you can build during a turn, and wands are how much you can scheme and plot. And also create guys like hammers, because we wanted to have you. If you have a wand you don't want, at least you can dump it into creating more guys. And Josh says working in the grammar is super fun. And so I've been trying to figure out the intent. So you have those, and then you also have plot cards, which are like, they're the same suits, and you hold them in your hand, and you can spend them later as a surprise to a player to have another action of that type. And that was working really well, but we decided that they're too good. So getting the building that gave you plot cards was better than having a building that gave you a certain amount of a thing. So you could have, if you could have two swords, or you could have two plot cards. Two plot cards is almost always better, because you could pivot better during the game based on what you got. Even the potential of getting stuck with something you didn't want was better than having two swords. And so we nerfed the cards a little bit, and that led to this like schemes which require cards to work, which score you points. Now, and it was intended for the mastermind sort of character to have a place to invest heavily in plot cards and then be able to play the scheme cards. Well, now you're getting so few plot cards that it's almost impossible to do the schemes. So now now I have to figure out what I'm going to do with the schemes. I'm thinking that I'm just going to make the schemes so you can burn your actions in addition to the cards, and then the cards are just still a little bit of surprise.
Sure.
And then the other thing we're going to do is just remove the building that gives you plot cards and just have players generate a certain amount naturally, based on how many cubes they've pulled from the board to man buildings.
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah, and so we'll see how that plays. My concern with that is that certain players are going to have a lot of plot cards, and some players are just never going to get any. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and then it ends up like, I think you eventually run to the other thing that you're running into is, as you're designing these different factions, how different is the design allowing the factions to be?
Right.
Is it pushing them closer together? Is it not letting them kind of spin off?
Well, I have the chart.
Yeah, I know. but the work is then moving, actually moving them into design.
The chart I'm referring to is I have a chart I drew in the office, and then I recreate it on paper, and it has chess, TI, root, and vast across the top of it. And the joke is that those are the approaches to variable player power or asymmetric position. And I drew that continuum, and I was putting the other games we're working on that continuum, and then Cole said, the 4 games!
The 4 games.
Yeah. So that's why I recreated it, was because I think that's I'm going to maintain that joke till I die. So we're just, it's those sorts of decisions about like how we're going to use those plot cards, and or if we just cut them, it's like. But I think I agree with you. I think a Civ game needs a little bit of hidden information to create some noise during decision making.
Yeah, and that was actually how Highfleet had even kind of come into this. Was I was just thinking about one of the first war games I've ever played where the use of hidden information is so important. Mm-hmm. It's like, you know, I played a lot of StarCraft for a long time. I get that scouting is critical. Highfleet, it's many orders of magnitude more important. And that's been on my mind.
The anxiety you explaining the design to me, I was like, I would just find a way to scout the whole map, continuously look at the whole map.
That's the thing. It just comes with costs. Yeah. I'm actually looking at a copy of my half price games find of the week, a game called Flat Top, an old Avalon Hill game, which is has a double blind mode and is all about like if you have a carrier group, if you use your planes to scout enemy positions, if they attack you while it's happening, you have less planes on your ship to defend, and it's a really interesting balance of some of those things.
All right.
Okay, so we do have some questions coming in. I'm happy to answer any questions. I've got some ARC stuff I want to talk about too. Do you think there will ever be an expansion for Oath? Do you feel like you've finished anything that you would like to with that game? I have 2 ideas for Oath expansions. I have an idea that would be very hard to do, that adds a lot of content, and is an interesting project, but one that I don't know if it will ever happen because I don't know if I will have the right kind of time to do it.
Sure.
Because it's just too much design work. There is also a smaller way to expand Oath, which I would like to do, and that is going to be just a question about like staffing, creative bandwidth, if we think it would be a good project. But I think there's a world where we could offer Oath another big expansion, or there's a world where we offer Oath a small expansion that is also a lot of content, but that really might activate some parts of the design. Mm-hmm. Because now the game has been out for almost a year. We're getting up to a year of Oath. That's about right. Mm-hmm. Boy, it seems like it's been longer. So now the game's been out for a year. I feel like I see the parts of the design that I wish there were more of, and I think that a small expansion could answer that. So it is something that I'd like to see.
I forgot to tweet this.
Oh well, you can retweet me or retweet them.
I'm bereft of phone, so.
All right, well, you can ask someone in the office to get a computer. Don't do that. I'm so happy you've been enjoying it. I'm very happy. The groups that have it. One of the things that most cheers me about that game when people share images of their journal pages, and then I see their journal pages are like in the teens and 20s.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Mine's on 1.
I have one home copy that I think is on like 6, but I just haven't played it very much since it's come out. I've been working on other things.
Yeah.
And also, I'm still in the usually for like the first year after a game I've worked on comes out, I don't really have any interest in playing it. Just because I've played it so much.
Yeah.
Probably 200 games in Oath right now.
I think that's where I'm at. Hello, the Vontar.
Oh yeah, hello. Oh yeah, trucks everywhere. Trucks and trains.
All right.
Yes.
I don't know. Let's hear some. The people are here for ARCs, apparently.
People are here for ARCs. We'll talk about ARCs. So, some intrepid person will notice that this board in front of us is very different from the last board that I showed.
It's pinker.
It's a clue. It is pinker.
Yeah.
I can't easily show this to you, but I will tell you the exercise that I did. So, originally, I designed ARCs. Yeah, go get it. And I'll talk about ARCs. Okay, so originally I drew the ARCs map as a route map, which is to say I put nodes, connected them with lines, figured out, and actually I love map making. Oh, I should say this for Patrick because I know he wanted to talk about map making today. I'll just start talking about it and he can come and maybe we talk about map making. So, yeah, are those hexagons? They are, sort of. I love map making because when you are doing map making for a game, you are having to answer some really tough questions about the system design. So, for instance, how many spaces, and if there are, for those spaces, how connected should they be to each other? And should there be restrictions on movement? How long should the map be? Should everything be roughly equidistant? There are all these really fundamental questions which I think that you can sometimes intuit, but it's this place in design that is a combination between the hard math of the design and a kind of intuition about the sorts of stories and expressiveness you want to give to that map. And so, like, as an example, for instance, Roots map, the number of slots was basically just determined by math. Like, we knew how many buildings were going to be built roughly. We knew that we had to have the corners balanced in a certain way. And then that determined basically all the slots in the map. But I also knew that I wanted some parts of the map that were very connected and some parts that were very far away. And I also knew that I wanted it to cost a certain amount of actions to move from one side to the board. So it's this combination of like thinking and feeling when you're doing map making. And so when I got to design Arcs, I originally thought of the map. Arcs' map went through so many iterations. And I'm probably going to have a whole design essay about the different versions of the map. The very first version of the map was probably the most direct reference to Patrick's game Voidlich that it exists within Arcs. This was like the most direct thing I wanted to ape from it, which was it had this like these 3 zones, and then you could move into a central zone and then kind of jump from the big islands. And then when you were at an island, there were smaller islands, which were the planets. And I liked that map, and I tried to build it within this, and I just couldn't get it to work. And so then I went to a map that was a giant ring of planets, that every planet was adjacent to 2 other planets, and they were in this big ring. And I liked that because it was easy to store. Like Oath, you could just kind of go whoop and just pull all the pieces together. And then that led to a version where the map built itself out of squares or out of hexagons or all these. And there I had talked about this for a long time, so I'm not going to. There were many different versions of Arc's map. I had like a cool exploration system. I had maps that were very like cleverly would store themselves in the box. But I was being too clever for my own good, and the essential element of Arcs was that the map kind of behaved like Roots map. I needed to have nodes. I needed to have paths to different places. There were going to be places where you could build, and there were going to be places where you couldn't build. And so I just sort of drew a Root-style map, but I knew that it was going to be spacey, and so in order to communicate spaciness, I stretched it out and made it bigger.
Can you show them a screenshot, maybe?
Not easily.
Okay.
But we'll
post one on Twitter.
Maybe. Folks can look at this mess. This is a map. So the main thing is that
they will not be modular.
It's not modular.
Yeah.
The main thing is I built a Root-style map, but I wanted it to feel bigger than Root because it's space. And so it has 18 planets instead of 12 clearings. And then it has all these interstitial places, all these like little like in-between zones. So you have to move into these voids if you want to get anywhere.
So it's like you can live on the path.
Yes, it's like the paths or spaces.
Yeah.
And we were testing this, and I noticed something kind of goofy. Where players would cluster all their pieces like little root clearings, but it didn't make the board feel spacey. It made it feel like Root, where we had all of our pieces in these little clearings around the map. And I realized it wasn't using the table space very well. So what I did is I said, what if instead of the spaces were just little nodes, like little clearings, what if they were actually like areas? What if this was an area movement map? So what you're looking at here, kind of barely, what you're looking at an angle, is a redrawing of Arcs' map with areas instead of nodes. It's the exact same map, actually, that we played with last month and the month before. Actually, this map is 4 months old, I think. I don't think any changes have been made to the map in 4 months.
You just showed me this a few weeks ago.
No, but this is the exact same map.
The math, okay. Right.
Yeah. All the connections and everything is the exact same. So I don't think the map hasn't changed in 4 months. But this looks very different. And some of you have noticed that there's hexagons. The reason why there's hexagons is if you ever have to draw an area map, it's very irritating. And so the easiest way to do it in Illustrator, I found, is make a hex map and then just kind of like select group of hexes and merge them into shapes. And then that will make the borders really cleanly, as opposed to taking out the pencil tool and trying to draw borders and things like that. So that's what you're looking at here. And I really like it because it... now your ships are like floating near planets, and it has a much spacier feel. Yeah. Despite being the same map. So sorry.
It's fun too. I played a game.
Patrick played a game
Friday.
He liked it. I've heard.
I do. I like it a lot. I am keener to play it right now than Rick.
Ooh.
Yeah.
It's a hot endorsement. There's this funny thing. I mean, so I'll answer that decagon question. You just want a shape that easily tessellates. I just happened to pick hexes. There are lots of other tessellating shapes and patterns that could have been picked. Hexes are easy. Yeah.
I like the combat system a lot, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty cute piece of design work myself. I like it.
I feel like rating's a little easy right now. I feel like rating's a little easy.
Might be a little easy.
Yeah, but otherwise it's fantastic.
We can drop a raid symbol. I like the combat system a lot because it gets players thinking in halves and thirds. Like when you're thinking about like, oh, I have a 2/3 chance of like hitting you. I have a 1/3 chance of taking a hit.
Yeah.
So it has. I think that there's like a very when you're deciding to fight or not, you can be very intuitive and not be too far off the mark, which is nice.
And I like in the trick style taking actions. Is that how we're describing it?
Yeah, sure.
I like that the deck isn't dealt out now, so there's a lot less like who's holding the 5 construction in my head. It's like, well, he might be holding it, but I'm just gonna play anyway.
Yeah. The action system is a mix of being very, very, very permissive. So like the way that
and that's the other thing I like. Yeah.
The way that like Nick, our developer Nick Brockman, explained it was, you can if you want to take one action, you can take any action you'd like.
Right.
If you want to take 2 actions, you might have to pay out the nose to take those 2 actions. If you want to take 2 actions and then immediately take another 2 actions, that's really going to cost you.
Right.
But you can do it. I mean, and I've mentioned this before on stream. You know, a hand of cards is worth. It could be worth as many as like 15 actions. Of those 15 actions, players are confronted with the choice of, would I rather take maybe 12 actions that I might not even want to take, or do I want to take 5 absolutely critical actions at the right moment?
Right.
And so it is so different from Pamir and from Root and from Oath, because those games are so action scarce, and in this, the game is just dumping actions on you. But everything else is scarce. Resources are scarce. You feel like there's a lot of racing that can happen because, and so I kind of skipped a sentence there. There's a lot of racing that happens in the game because there's so much tempo control. You can very easily catch up to a position if you fell behind, and that doesn't normally happen in games that I've worked on.
And I love Kyle art. So.
And you love Kyle art. Oh. I have to talk to Kyle after this. Kyle, if you're watching, I'm going to send you a Slack.
He's watching.
I want to chat about piece design because I think I've got some numbers now we can play with.
I'm going to the post office after this, so if anybody needs anything mailed, I'm there for you. So.
The art for this has been really funny. I'll mention one other little thing. Kyle did about 20 pieces of concept art in the fall, which populate all the game's cards right now. And then he's working on the like frames and some of the map design and the color space. But we are building this game's art kind of backwards from how we normally do it, where we're doing like things like the icon and the general card design are happening before a lot of the core art happens.
Sure.
And this has been, we had planned originally on doing a crowdfunding campaign earlier in the year, but we decided to wait because it would allow us to allow the Kyle to do the cover after a lot of the game art is done.
Sure.
And it just sort of like allows us a little bit more time.
And to plan the miniature extravaganza it's going to be. No, not at all. Not at all.
Even if there are minis, and there might be, it's not going to be bananas.
And not going to be extravagant.
I always
wait until we get Marvel, then we'll do that.
Yeah. That's the last ride.
Yeah,
Cole Patrick's last ride.
Cole's like, I'm gonna do John Company full time. I'll see you later.
We'll do one more. And one thing that we're trying to do, that we actually try to do with a lot of our games, is not have too many different types of player pieces. This is like one of my favorite things about Root, is that like players have their warriors and then a few other pieces.
Yeah.
This game has a couple more extra pieces than that, but it's not many. And I think that just has a very nice way of grounding things.
This could even be the same building. I mean, like, it can't be because you
played
around it, but it could have been, yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. We'll see what happens. I mean, maybe.
I mean, it'd be fun. I'm certain of that.
Yeah, just the white. We call it the white box.
Yeah,
I'm sure no one would be mad about that. We should talk about Marauder fulfillment because we had a Kickstarter update about it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we can talk about that.
I saw a much earlier comment about it. Do you want to tell us about Root Marauder?
Yeah, it's so a lot of it is arrived. The challenge we have before us right now, and this is getting probably more nitty gritty than Marshall wants me to admit to, is that it's like we just bought whatever berth we could and put containers on ships, and people are like, when the ship arrives, and I like in Woodland Warriors, and I was like, the ship.
Yeah.
No, we run like 12, and that's the U.S. Europe was 4 or 5.
And we didn't fill 12 ships, but it was like, there's a corner there. We'll spot. Yeah.
And so the problem is the factory doesn't help you out. I mean, why they don't have to, or why would they? They put the container we got is all of one thing, so we can't really ship anything until we have one of everything. And and so we're working our way through that right now. But it's imminent, and that we're gonna start doing that.
Yeah, I feel like the next design sphere we're gonna have, we're just gonna be talking about Root Marauder.
Yeah.
Because folks, hopefully, they'll start moving back,
and they'll realize how awesome the rats are.
They're really good.
By then,
we will both watch tournament games too. You and I had a moment. We were watching the same Root stream.
Yeah, we were. That's funny. Yeah, and then Thursday I'll be participating in Weird Root. They're gonna pit the bots against each other and take bets, kind of down 4 style throughout the game about which bot is going to win the game, and so they'll be doing that. So so Root shipping is imminent. Logistics are a challenge right now, and I'm not mad, not upset. No. I'm not gonna say it's a hellscape like hyperbole of some of my contemporaries, but I'm just gonna say you just gotta be patient. That's all there is. Yeah,
it's coming. And you will have. I mean, this is so much content. I mean, the things that someone asked about when you revisit a game. Ooh, do you go backwards or forwards first? I don't know what you mean by that question, Squidmark.
To do an expansion. So, are we starting from the base and challenging the rules with the expansion, or are we looking at the whole thing and challenging the rules? I think that's my interpretation.
What would your answer be?
I think I go back to the first start. I look for the exceptions.
Yeah.
And frankly, the rats are based on, despite people asking me, are they based on X? They're literally based on my earliest notes for the Vagabond. Mm-hmm. And then it was like, because when we started, I wanted us to be a few Vagabonds and they'd play kind of differently from each other. Yeah. And so the rat is the warlord character that had a few followers that he got all the Vagabond points, but he also got a bonus point if he had his own clearing to himself. You know? And then we didn't start with that scoring, but then we came back to like, how about the scoring be dominance? And I was like, of course.
Yeah.
So
I think that that's it. I think I usually think forward. I think I look at the full thing when I'm thinking about expansions, but I'm not sure. That's a tricky question. Okay. So a couple good questions.
Now I've had a great question earlier about theme that I would love it if they repeated it. Unless we're not done.
No, that's fine. Yeah. Do you want me to answer a little question while they repeat their question?
Oh, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
So someone asked about, is the theme of Ark subtle enough that you can start to describe it? Kind of. So it's a science fiction setting that is fantasy inflected. So a little bit more like Dune and Fading Suns than like Star Trek, I think is probably fair. It's sort of a...
Fading Suns, that's a word I haven't heard in a long time. Go ahead.
No. I brought it up before, but just I think it has. This is a fantasy setting where people are wearing cloaks. In terms of the setting of the game, one thing that I'm trying to be very mindful of is building many like layers to the game's history, and that is being very inflected by both games like Caves of Cod, but also other RPGs where the world is presented as having like lots of strata, and that you get many different types of histories kind of coexisting at the same time, rather than like there was this modern present, or like it used to be this way and now we're all like this.
Right.
And so like you start the game operating as part of this like single unified civilization that is itself like fractured and old and sort of falling apart. And as you explore the game, you find layers down and also layers out.
Right.
But a lot of that's being set now, and I think the art that Kyle did for in the fall has really set the tone for the broader world, and you're going to see more stuff that kind of looks like that vein. What was Nev's question?
Oh, so Nev asked. They listed all of the like Fast is high fantasy, Root is this war game, and then have you considered what themes would you like to explore in the future?
So if Oath is low comic fantasy,
or it's history in motion.
Yeah. And I think Arcs is like low comic science fiction. is my angle. Although it's a little darker. Some folks may know that I really want to make a murder mystery game. And
I think that's what everyone's pumping up to talk about.
Yeah, well, we can talk about it. That's fine.
There you go.
I have ideas. Oh yeah.
From Fort there.
Oh yeah. So Fortuna Invicta. Thank you. So I would really like to do more of a contemporary setting. Although for the murder mystery game, I would really love it to be like 1930s or 1940s in its look. I think about the movie.
Could you do it like Knives Out, where it's modern, but it still feels like it's in the 40s?
It feels like it's maybe. I just think about the movie like Rules of the Game by Renoir, and I just love how it looks, how that movie looks and feels, and I think it'd be a great setting.
So, and it's interesting that Cole, when you kind of started talking about that, I got very excited about the idea that kind of one of my fantasy pitches when I was back in 2005 or 2008 before we started all this is that we do I didn't know there was going to be this back then, but I would love to have done just a couple of games set in kind of the modern world. The 40s is fine, now is fine, but and kind of look at kind of a slice of American life a little bit. So obviously murder is not the typical the typical American experience, but and so I pitched a couple ideas at that time to talk about that. So
I would also love us to do a Western game, Co.
Yeah.
Because I think I love Westerns. I don't think we've ever really talked about Westerns. I know that Kyle likes Westerns.
Sam Elliott talked about Westerns today. The actor, he thought that The Power of the Dog was really stupid.
He's wrong.
You're really stupid.
He's wrong.
Yeah,
it's good.
Yeah,
it's really good. We've done a little bit of the modern. I would actually love to see the kind of Fort kid setting built out more.
Yeah,
there's a lot of games to explore there. I would love to do a game that was like Bronze Age. That was kind of like an Ancients game. Would be really
sure.
Really
yeah, I think you kind of talked about that at one point for early Oath.
I thought about building Oath around something that was more flagged as Bronze Age. The problem with that is that people read it as medieval. If you do a fantasy Bronze Age setting, it just gets lost as it gets this is medieval.
I think it's even the artists can't. That was the Bronze Age part of. That GameCube game that was Cthulhu, Eternal Darkness. The first act of it set in ancient Roman soldier. So I guess a little bit of post Bronze Age, but I still feel like the medieval sensibility of the artist was pushed onto that character.
No, this is the problem that the Glorantha setting has, the RuneQuest stuff.
Right.
It has the same problem.
Yeah, and I'd like to do. I tried cutting together a little bit of a kart racing game in the Fort world, and it failed. But I look at pitches for it, and I think Grant has suggested that too.
Yeah, I think we totally explore it. But I don't, I also think that what will happen as we grow as a studio is that we're gonna do another fantasy game, and there'll be another game in the Animal Root world, right? I mean, that we've even talked about that in the past. And so these aren't settings that will kind of move on. I don't think we're trying to play the hits or anything like that,
we're just doing fun stuff. I like Wizards, so that's my aesthetic.
Yeah, I think and Kyle's right. I think Glorantha, when they announced the new edition of RuneQuest, it should have just been only ducks. Just only ducks.
Duck Quest.
Judging from the reception of Root, they would have done a lot better.
Yeah, that's yes. All right, I'm on it.
There you go. So I'll say a word about the Clue game, hilariously. So I already told this to Patrick.
This is hilarious.
I had such a funny weekend. I was very, very busy this weekend. I did a bunch of talks and interviews. Had a lovely time. and had one of my favorite interviews I've ever had. I'll post it on Twitter probably in a few days, with Fred Saval, the designer of Red Flag Over Paris. I loved that interview. It was so much fun. He did such a good job preparing. And on Monday afternoon, I was like, I wonder if that interview ever got to Reddit. I'd love to see if anybody had watched it, because I thought it was really interesting. And I went to Reddit, and all I saw was that Dicebreaker article about Clue. And to anyone who's commented on that Reddit thread, I've played Mysterium. That's precisely the type of game that I'm not wanting to make. That thread was so funny, because the Dicebreaker article, and I mean, I said the quote, but I qualified it immediately, which is that I really wanted to make a better Clue. But specifically, I was not talking about Awkward Guess, or Mysterium, or Cryptid, or any of those games, or the Museum Caper, or Murder on the Orient Express, or Mystery at the Abbey, or Name of the Rose, or any of those other games like that, which to me are all good deduction games. I mean, I think Clue is actually like a pretty good deduction game. The roll and move makes it better, actually. And the problem with that, and this is something that I feel like it was a great instance of what happened on Reddit, was people got very excited about the conversation about their favorite deduction games.
Yeah.
And nobody actually read the piece, because the problem with those games is that they have weak nouns and verbs, that all the items of the game are inert.
So you want it to be Awkward Guess?
So you want to do Awkward Guess?
Yeah.
No, I don't like, Awkward Guess is fun.
Okay.
I've had a great time playing Awkward Guess the few times I've played it, but it is just not the game that I think I've never played a mystery game that actually felt the way you feel when you play a mystery novel, when you read a mystery novel or watch a mystery. And I think the reason why, and it occurred to me, the reason why I mentioned it is when I had that interview with Alex, my wife and I had just watched the 77 or 78 Death on the Nile, the Poirot mystery, and it is amazing because, it has a long wind-up. You're waiting for a murder. Oh, there's the murder. The investigation begins.
Yeah.
But critically, that's the first murder.
Right.
And they keep coming as the investigation is going, and it's a thriller. I mean, the movie is a real thriller.
Sure.
And that kind of energy is fabulous, and I think a game could do it really well. So I have mechanical ideas for how I'd want to do it. My general goal would be, it would be quite simple, probably mostly card driven, may have a board. I have like two mechanisms, which I won't even talk about because I'm like probably a year from even starting working on it. But I really want it to be pretty fast and like playable in something like 45 minutes with a group of 4, maybe 5. And I want it to be interactive, living and breathing, and for every player to feel like they've got the breadth of an investigator on their neck. That they're very close to being found out and also getting away with something.
Sure.
And that I think is going to be the real challenge of that design.
Have you played that game where the you're dumping the cubes down the central shaft and you're listening to them?
Oh yeah, what is that called? Morte something?
It's just horribly ableist, but also like
it's almost all games are.
Yeah, that's true.
But that game, what is it called? Invino? No, not Invino Morte. That's the wine.
Yeah,
game.
If someone knows that game,
it's a Zoch game, like ZOCH.
There's a game called Brindle Bay that just came out. It's an RPG. You can find an RPG now. It's literally you're all playing retired women investigating a murder in your little sleepy.
I love that.
Seaside town.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's
that's
great.
Perfect. And I also love it because I feel like one of the big goals of ARCS is I really wanted. Now I talked about this with Kyle. So many of the games I've worked on, especially for Leader, have been political games, war games fundamentally, which is I think a fine and good subject for a game. But I really want to build engines that can tell different kinds of stories. And so one of the exciting things about ARCS is sometimes you tell a story that is not about who's going to get to be king, and that is the thread of the story. And I like the idea of doing a murder mystery game because it's a very different kind of story, and it gets to let me use different tools.
Yeah, I think that's. I think getting out more is. We should eventually get there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good subject for a game.
Yeah,
I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I also like. If someone wants to know what I think about, like, insurgency, Root has got you covered.
Yeah.
And there are just other things to think about. Unsettled. Have you played it yet?
I have not played it yet.
I played it. It's pretty good. It's not. Unsettled is a game that I would be happy to play, but is also not the kind of game that I will like break out every evening. It's just it's a puzzly co-op. You know what it reminds me of? It's a lot like Arkham, and I think because I like Arkham, Unsettled does not like kick Arkham out of
Sure.
and I'm talking about Arkham the card game. But it's very puzzly, and you're kind of trying to solve the different scenarios in different ways. The production is weird. I have like weird thoughts about how they produced that game. I think it takes up too much table space. That's a personal feeling. But I could also see for a lot of folks saying, hey, I never really got into Arkham, or I really want a... so here's what Unsettled is. It is an extremely modular co-op game in the way that Arkham the card game is also an extremely modular co-op game. And it's very, very, very thematic. And I think if you're looking for a game like that, it's probably the best in class. I mean, the core design is quite good.
I'll take it home. I just have not... I mean, I've been cannibalizing on my time to design and work on Dungeon Fortress, so that's hard to play right now.
Arcs...
It's Brindlewood Bay, by the way. I screwed...
No, there you go. You got it.
I haven't picked it up yet. I would like... it's in my shopping cart and drive-through.
Yeah. We are... the ARCS crowdfunding campaign will probably be announced within a couple months. We'll announce the date. So we are getting close to the announcement, but not there yet. And we also... we have an idea of when we want to do it, but I couldn't even announce it here if I wanted to, because we have to make sure that we get preview copies out, that we have some other art assets done, that we have the factory quote back. So there's all this back-end stuff that is yet to be resolved, so we actually can't announce it yet.
Yeah, it's got to be fun, too.
It's got to be fun, too.
Yeah.
It's very important. Okay, cool. So we are coming up on the end here. Are there other questions or things that you would like to talk about?
We usually go 30 minutes over lately.
Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah. And no any questions.
We've been talking fast, and also it's,
Do you want to talk about Project Sub 2, or do you want to wait?
I want to wait.
Okay, that's fine.
It's really good. It's really exciting. No one in this chat, well, that's not true. No one who's not staff in this chat knows anything about it, which is exciting. I feel like we keep a lot more secrets these days. What happened to us?
What happened? We just blab everything.
Do you know what it is? It's the fact that...
There's someone in the chat who's not a Leader Games employee that I've played it with.
Oh, boy.
Oh, yeah.
I think what it is we have this schedule, and we really have to keep to it.
Yeah, that's
because if we start talking, then someone's going to write a Dicebreaker article,
and then suddenly we're doing
and then everyone's going to be very excited, and then they're going to be like, "Oh, ARCS is on Kickstarter. I thought that game already came out." and we end up shorting like the immediate things for the longer things.
Sure.
This is a very silly thing happened like this when we were working on Fort, which like Fort was pretty much completed in silence. We didn't really talk about Fort at all.
Yeah.
And even the dev staff said like, we wanted to talk about this game more. And I said, well, you'll get a chance to. And then 6 months later, the game came out, and we were able to talk about it and have a good time. Have a good time. But it's one of those moments where we just have a few things in the cooker right now that are of similar scope. That's a hint. And we can't talk about them too much.
This is my design journal. And my notes for the company. It has nothing really pressing on it.
Yeah. That is the book on the table.
Milda, I tell you what, I will play it with you. How's that? So then you'll know. So.
And it's also very good.
Yeah.
I just want a ringing endorsement. We're really just trying to make life easier on our marketing team, which is a noble goal. And also, here, speaking completely frankly, the real reason why we don't want to go into it right now is I love it. I think it's wonderful. I do not want it to be swallowed by ARCS.
Sure,
because what's going to happen in a month is we're going to be talking so much about ARCS in the lead up to the campaign. I want to make a BGG page. We're going to start posting things about it. People are going to be able to start playing it online. And I don't want anything to get lost in that tumult.
Sure.
And so we all have to wait our turn.
All right, last question. Thoughts on Dustbin Infamy?
This is...
you only score 1 point every PC kill as the BB.
Yeah, That's right. I remember now. So the change is that no matter the number of pieces, you just score a single point. A very reasonable balance alteration, I think. There are a number in Root. There are a number of small balance adjustments which we have not made because it is difficult to change Root. There are just too many copies out there. And what I think we've run into as a kind of consensus is, Garrick and others are managing the winter tournament. And right now, there's also a tournament going on in France. I think there's another tournament happening in Sweden. And these tournaments are oftentimes using like a couple sort of house rules about certain scoring things. And I think that is a completely normal and fine place to say, like, hey, you're playing a tournament game. Here are the like 5 adjustments that we make in tournament play. And I have no objection to that. And if it's the kind of thing that someday we might officially support in some capacity, but right now we're not.
Right.
That's mostly because we've got all these other new games we want to work on instead. I can't stress that enough. If we had to like release a Eerie Leader card supplement,
it would take time.
Yeah, that means Arcs comes out a month later. Like,
I
don't want that.
All right. Vast is. We've talked about ways to revitalize it, but we haven't. Again, it would delay other things.
I think the way I'm thinking about our schedule right now is we have our lineup for the next year and a half, 2 years, kind of locked. Vast is not in that lineup.
Yeah.
There's not going to be a surprise Vast title in that time. And the next time we start coming up, like the year or two after that block, there's a very real chance it could be in that lineup. But it's not going to be in the immediate future.
Yep.
I would like to go still work on it. I think that there's a real interest in the creative team to hit it again.
Yeah.
But we just have to wait for the right
I think.
time.
Yeah. Yep. There's been some interesting things, but yes, we gotta wait.
Yep.
All right. Cool.
Fast and the Furious. We can do it. All right. That's it for us, I think.
Yeah. I think we covered Brooke, have we covered everything?
Brooke gets 1 minute to respond.
And then we're out of here.
Then we're out of here.
I gotta go to the post office.
Yeah, he's going to the post office. And if, for those of you who don't know, because not everyone has access to a post office 12 feet from our office building, this post office keeps very strange hours.
There's only 2 people, so they have to shut down for lunch.
Yes, they have to shut down. They have a weird afternoon lunch.
Okay. Brooke said thank you always.
Oh, good.
So,
good.
all right.
All right.
Cool.
Well, take care, everybody. Have a lovely March, and we will see you at the start of April with hopefully some big news.
I'm going to cut buildings out. Take care.
All right. See ya.